Namaskar, welcome to the YouTube channel of Dharmdevashish. In our last video, we had discussed the administrative setup of the Union Territory of Pondicherry. Today, we'll be taking into account the status of Delhi and what is its administrative setup. Now, to understand about the administrative setup of the UT of Delhi, it is better to look into the timeline of the status of Delhi and how it has changed over time. With the passage of time, what all changes have come into picture, we'll be taking this particular point into account, and by analyzing these changes, we will try to understand that what is the current situation with respect to the UT of Delhi. To understand the timeline, we have to go back into the history of Delhi, and we can start our journey from the year 1911. Now, what is the historical importance of the year 1911? In the year 1911, it was declared that Delhi would be made the new capital of the British India. It means a shift of capital would take place from the then capital Calcutta to Delhi. And finally, in the year 1912, the new capital was inaugurated as well. Now, please understand that at that point of time, that is in the year 1911, Delhi, the area of Delhi was part and parcel of the Punjab province. Meaning thereby at that point of time in the year 1911, Punjab province would be having a large territorial area, and Delhi was one of the districts of Punjab province, comprising of the Delhi Tehsil and Mehrauli Thana, Mehrauli police station. So what happened that this area, this Delhi district of Punjab province was annexed and constituted into a separate entity comprising of the Delhi Tehsil and the Mehrauli police station, and a separate administrative setup was made for this area, and this came to be known as, or Delhi came to be known as, the Chief Commissioner's province. Now, in the year 1912, Delhi Laws Act was passed. A piece of legislation was passed in the legislature, Delhi Laws Act, in the year 1912. And why this was passed? This was passed to implement or to apply, or to make it possible to apply, to be more precise, the provincial legislations which were being implemented in the province of Punjab. You know, those particular laws to be made applicable to Delhi. This was the basic reason of passing the Delhi Laws Act in the year 1912, and it was passed which made specific laws of Punjab province applicable to Delhi. In the year 1915, this Delhi Laws Act 1912, this was amended in the year 1915, and through this amendment, the Chief Commissioner of Delhi was given the powers to determine that what all laws from the Punjab province would be made applicable in the Chief Commissioner's province of Delhi. And the decision of the Chief Commissioner in this regard was to be notified through the government gazette, the Gazette of India. Apart from this 1915 amendment of Delhi Laws Act increased the territorial area of the Chief Commissioner's province of Delhi, and you see that certain areas from the erstwhile United Province of Agra and Awadh, they were added into Delhi. Current day areas like current day areas of Delhi like Seelampur, Wazirpur, etc., they were added into the territorial area of Delhi. So this was the historical beginning, and we see that slowly and steadily the administrative setup of Delhi is transforming. Moving fast forward to the scenario that was the reality post-independence in the year 1950 onwards, we see that post-independence in the year 1951, the legislature passed the Government of Part C States Act, Please try to recall from the previous video that when in the year 1950 the Constitution of India was operationalized, it so happened that the first schedule of the Constitution of India was giving information about the different areas of India, and they were categorized as Part A, Part B, Part C, and Part D states. Now, with respect to the administrative setup of Part C states, this Government of Part C States Act 1951 was enacted, and through this act, Government of Part C States Act 1951, a legislative assembly was established in Delhi for the first time. So please understand that though in the decade of 1990s, a legislative assembly and a council of ministers, the provisions regarding this had been made through a constitutional amendment again in the decade of 1990s. But if we trace the history of the legislative assembly of Delhi, then for the first time we see that it is through the Government of Part C States Act 1951 that a legislative assembly was established in Delhi. Now, what were the powers of this legislative assembly, which was established in Delhi under the terms of this Part C States Act 1951? Now, the Delhi Legislative Assembly had the powers to make laws on matters that are enumerated in the state list of the 7th schedule, meaning thereby the Delhi Assembly was having the functional domain over the state list of the 7th schedule. But at the same time, the Delhi Assembly was not allowed to make laws with respect to public order, police, including the railway police. Also, Delhi Assembly cannot create municipal corporations or any other local authorities, or cannot pass any law which could be granting powers to them. Furthermore, the land and buildings, the property of the unions situated within the territory of Delhi, could not be taxed. The Delhi Assembly was not having any powers to regulate such properties that were belonging to the union. Furthermore, the Delhi Assembly could not legislate on offences which were related to the violation of laws pertaining to other subjects in the state lists, nor the Delhi Assembly was competent to alter the jurisdiction of courts on matters that are mentioned in the state list. So this all was done through the 1951 Government of Part C States Act, which provided the Delhi Assembly, which constituted the Delhi Assembly to be more precise, but at the same time limited its functional capabilities. Now, in the year 1956, what happened that Delhi was granted the status of being a union territory, and how it happened? Because of the Constitution's 7th Amendment Act 1956 that we have seen in the previous video, if you recall from there, as well as the implementation of the State Reorganization Act in 1956. Now, Delhi was granted this UT status, and an administrator was to be appointed in this regard for the administration of UT on behalf of the president. And who would be the appointing authority? Obviously, it would be the president. And this led to the creation of the UT status. The granting of UT status led to the abolishment of the Legislative Assembly of Delhi. So in the year 1951, this Legislative Assembly comes into picture, and it is concluded, or you can say the assembly is abolished in the year 1956. If we just roll back to the previous point, that through the Government of Part C States Act 1951, the Legislative Assembly is created. For examination purposes, please take a note of this fact that Government of Part C States Act 1951 creates the Legislative Assembly, and in the year 1956, through this Constitution 7th Amendment Act 1956 and the implementation of SRC, implementation of the State Reorganization Act 1956 grants union territory status to the territory of Delhi, the area of Delhi, and abolishes the Legislative Assembly. Comes the year 1966. Now, what happens in 1966? Mind you that by the time 1966 is reached, It's already 10 years of the granting of UT status. So a new act comes into picture, Delhi Administration Act 1966. And now what happens that a representative body by the name of Metropolitan Council comes into picture. Delhi being a metropolitan area, so a big area, big population, so arrangements were made to provide representative bodies, obviously multi-member bodies. And what was the name given to that multi-member body? It was the Metropolitan Council. Now, what was the strength or the membership? It was of 61 members. The membership of this Metropolitan Council was that of 61 members. And out of 61 members, 56 members were elected and 5 members were nominated. So in place of creating a legislative assembly, which was there like 10 years back, if we calculate from the year 1966, now 10 years back would be 1956. In 1956, the Legislative Assembly is abolished. But just 10 years later, in the year 1966, a 61-member Metropolitan Council is created through the Delhi Administration Act 1966. By the year 1989, a committee was constituted. A committee was constituted under the chairmanship of Mr. Balakrishnan, who was a civil servant. And this Balakrishnan committee was set up to look into the state of affairs of the UT of Delhi and to provide effective recommendations in this regard, so that administrative setup of Delhi could be improved in some way or the other. Now, this Balakrishnan committee was set up in the year 1987, and finally it made its recommendations. It provided its recommendations with respect to the administrative setup. That the committee submitted its report in the year 1989, and the committee recommended that Delhi should be remaining as a UT. The status of Delhi therefore should not be changed. It should remain a UT, and they gave their own set of reasons and rationales of maintaining the status quo in this regard. Not altering the UT status was one of them, and one of the prime reasons being that Delhi being a sensitive area, it houses the diplomatic enclave, Chanakyapuri, as you all know. All the embassies and high commissions are present in that locality. Sensitive installations are there. The seat of the union government is there. So keeping all these factors in mind, the Balakrishnan committee in the year 1989 in its report recommended that Delhi should remain as UT. However, now here we see an important point coming into picture, that a legislative assembly and a council of ministers must be constituted. So a legislative assembly which was having its birth in the year 1951, having its demise in the year 1956, and then again in the year 1966 Metropolitan Council coming into picture, and by the year 1989 recommendations are again surfacing, again saying that legislative assembly should be constituted, and not only legislative assembly, a council of ministers should also come into picture. Apart from this, Balakrishnan committee also said that Delhi should be conferred with a special status through a constitutional amendment. Not granting special status through a parliamentary law, but by making provisions in the constitution itself, and the parliament should amend the constitution by using its constituent powers and grant special status to Delhi. Now, by the year 1991, political will had been made up, and this political will of the parliamentarians was displayed through two pieces of legislations which they passed. The first was the constitutional amendment itself. Now, the Constitution 69th Amendment Act 1991, this constitutional amendment provides special status to Delhi, and how this is done by insertion of two articles, 239AA and 239AB. Now, as I said earlier, that the Parliament enacted two pieces of legislation. One was the constitutional amendment. The other is uh, uh, this Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Act, Government of NCT of Delhi Act 1991. But we will come to this 1991 Delhi NCT Act in a moment. Let's first understand that what were the provisions that were included in the Constitution via this constitutional amendment. Now this, as the text says, that Article 239 AA of the Constitution created special provisions for Delhi. What was the first special provision? The first special provision was the change in the nomenclature, the change in the name itself. The Union Territory of Delhi, after the notification of this constitutional amendment, would henceforth be called as the National Capital Territory of Delhi. Meaning thereby what we call as the Government of NCT of Delhi, this name itself comes from Article 239 AA. This National Capital Territory, the usage of the set of words National Capital Territory of Delhi in place of Union Territory of Delhi, this is having its genesis, this is having its birth in this Article 239 AA. Furthermore, the administrator of NCT, the administrator of National Capital Territory of Delhi would be referred to as, the designation now would be Lieutenant Governor. In the previous video, we had already discussed that the president can appoint the administrator, and the president can also decide that what would be the designation of the administrator. So this Article 239 AA informs that the administrator of NCT would be having the designation of LG, or Lieutenant Governor. Furthermore, Legislative Assembly was to be constituted under the terms of Article 239 AA, which would be having the powers to make laws for the territorial area of NCT on matters that are mentioned in the state list and the concurrent list of the Constitution. Now, a twilight zone is coming into picture, as we have discussed in the previous video. And how that twilight zone is coming into picture, let's see the implications of that twilight zone over here. That the government, the legislative assembly of NCT of Delhi can make laws on state list and concurrent list, but at the same time the legislature of NCT of Delhi is not having full-fledged powers to legislate on each and every matter of the state list. Why? Because the NCT legislature cannot make any law with respect to public order, police and land. And what are these entries? From examination point of view, this becomes important. This is entries number 1, 2 and 18 of the state list. Meaning thereby, what would be the practical implication of this provision? The practical implication is that Delhi police is not under the control of the Delhi government. Now, I hope you are able to understand that how that twilight zone is coming into picture. Now, if Delhi police is not under the control of the Delhi government, the government of NCT of Delhi, or not under the control of the chief minister, then who is controlling Delhi police? It is the Delhi police. It comes under the direct control of Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. It is the Union Home Ministry which controls the Delhi police. So this is the practical implication. Now, theoretically speaking, what does this mean? It means that the parliament is still competent. It means that the parliament is still having all the powers to make laws in this regard. Furthermore, the provisions of Article 239 AA, they inform that there would be a council of ministers headed by the chief minister of Delhi. And what would be the function of this council of ministers and chief minister? Just like any other state administration, state government, the same role which is performed by a state chief minister, the chief minister of a full-fledged state, the same role would be performed by the chief minister of Delhi and his or her council of ministers, and that would be to aid and advise the LG on those matters on which Legislative Assembly is competent to make laws. Now, if a question is asked, can the Chief Minister of Delhi provide aid and advice to the Lieutenant Governor on matters related to police? The answer is straight away no. Why? Because the Legislative Assembly of Delhi is not having the powers to make any law with respect to police, or for that matter public order, or for that matter land. Now in case of a disagreement, between the LG and the Legislative Assembly, who would be the arbitrator? Who would be having the deciding say? It would be the President who would be deciding upon such disputes. Furthermore, what happened through the 69th Amendment, Article 239AB was also inserted. Now what is this Article 239AB? What is this 239AB? This deals with situations which lead to failure of constitutional machinery. Now this failure of constitutional machinery, this set of words has it appears in another article, Article 356. But Article 356 is applicable to full-fledged states, not to a UT, I would say. But when it comes to UT, and if that UT is, this Union Territory is Delhi, known as in the official documents known as the NCT of Delhi, then in case there is a failure of constitutional machinery, then which article would be operationalized? It is Article 239AB. I'm sorry, 239AB. Now 239AB laid out provisions that would come into force in case of failure of a constitutional machinery, as I said earlier. Now, how will this Article 239AB would be operationalized, and what would be the reporting procedure in this regard? The reporting procedure is that LG would be making a report, the Lieutenant Governor would be making a report, sending a report, presenting a report to the President, and if the President via that report comes to the conclusion that the administration of NCT is not being carried out in accordance with the provisions of Article 239AA, then in such a case, provisions under Article 239AB can be operationalized, can be utilized. Provisions under Article 239AB can be utilized, and what will the President is empowered to do? The President is empowered to pass an order suspending the operation of Article 239AA or any law which has been made under it. So either the President can suspend the operationalization of Article 239AA itself. Now Article 239AA itself is the governing paradigm. If Article 239AA is suspended, every other law which is made or passed under the provisions of Article 239AA, it also automatically comes under suspension. Now let's try to understand the Government of NCT of Delhi Act, which was again passed in the year 1991. Please understand that this Act, Government of NCT of Delhi Act 1991, this has been passed under the powers that are mentioned in Article 239AA. So as I said earlier, that Article 239AA is the governing paradigm, and the Government of NCT of Delhi Act is functioning within the shadow of Article 239AA. Now Parliament has enacted this Government of NCT of Delhi Act 1991, and why it was done so? To give effect to the provisions of Article 239AA. As I said earlier, that Article 239AA is the governing paradigm, is that main structure in whose shadow Government of NCT of Delhi Act is functional. Now as per the Act, LG enjoys discretion. The Lieutenant Governor enjoys discretion with respect to only those matters that are outside the legislative competence of the Legislative Assembly of NCT, or on such matters that are designated, which are delegated by the President. So discretionary powers are available to the LG of Delhi, but only on those matters which are either delegated by the President, which are delegated to the president, and secondly on those matters which are outside the legislative competence of the Legislative Assembly of NCT of Delhi. Meaning thereby public order, police and land, there would be those areas on which LG can use his or her discretion. However, if a law requires LG to exercise his or her discretion, in such a case also, the LG will function without the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister. Now this again comes through the Government of NCT of Delhi Act, which was again passed in the year 1991. Comes the year 1996. Now 1996, with respect to the administrative setup of Delhi, is an important year. Why? Because this case, New Delhi Municipal Corporation, NDMC versus State of Punjab, this case was decided by a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court. And what does this judgment said? This judgment said that Delhi still remains a UT. In the year 1996, when this judgment came, the judgment held that Delhi remains a union territory, which is referred to as, or which is called as, National Capital Territory. And this change in nomenclature, this change in status has happened through a parliamentary law, meaning thereby the parliament has changed the status by using its constituent powers. And how those constituent powers were operationalized? By amending the constitution, if you remember, the 69th Amendment Act. Further, it said that UT of Delhi constitutes an administrative class by itself and is therefore distinct from other union territories. Delhi enjoys a unique constitutional status as it is having a legislative assembly as well as a council of ministers, and a cabinet system of government is being operationalized. However, Justice Jeevan Reddy, who was writing the majority judgment, he sounded a note of caution and said that the legislature which has been the handiwork, which is the creation of Article 239AA, is not like the legislature of a state. And at the same time, every other union territory cannot be placed on an equal footing like that of the status of Delhi. So this was all in the year 1996. In the year 2016, this dispute again came into picture. This debate again came into picture, and it came before the Delhi High Court that whether that what is the status of the territorial area referred to as NCT Delhi. Now this was in the case Rajendra Prasad versus Government of NCT of Delhi, that this dispute again came into picture, and the Delhi High Court held that Delhi continues to remain a union territory even though there is this Article 239AA which is in the Constitution. To the question that who is the executive head of the NCT, whether it is the Lieutenant Governor or the Chief Minister, democratically elected Chief Minister, the Delhi High Court held that it is the LG who is the executive head of National Capital Territory of Delhi and not the Chief Minister. So according to the Delhi High Court judgment in Rajendra Prasad versus Government of NCT of Delhi, it is the LG who is the executive head. Now what would be the implication of this situation where LG, Lieutenant Governor, is the executive head? It means that the Lieutenant Governor can act independently of the advice of Council of Ministers. And why so? Because Article 239, if you recall Article 239 from our previous discussion, Article 239 empowers the Lieutenant Governor, I'm sorry, this should be Governor, not Government. So Lieutenant Governor can act independently of the advice of Council of Ministers. Furthermore, the judgment said that the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister should obtain concurrence of the LG on all administrative decisions, meaning thereby any decision and every decision which is taken by the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister, should be having the concurrence, should be having the permission of of the Lieutenant Governor, and with respect to what matters, the administrative decisions, matters related to the day-to-day administration, you can say. Now, obviously, this judgment of the Delhi High Court restricted the functional space of Delhi government. The government of NCT of Delhi felt that its functional space is getting restricted, is getting stifled. So what it did, what Delhi government did, Delhi government went to the Supreme Court against this decision, and the Supreme Court in the year 2018 overturned the judgment passed by the Delhi High Court and declared that it is the Chief Minister who is the executive head, not the LG. So the Supreme Court, through its constitutional bench in Government of NCT of Delhi versus of Union of India, unanimously held that Chief Minister is the executive head of the NCT. Now, what would be the implication of this situation? It means that LG would not be having unlimited discretion. LG is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, but only on those matters where the Delhi Assembly has the power to make laws. Now, LG is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers on all matters where the Delhi Assembly has the power to make laws, meaning thereby except public order, police and land, all the other items on which the Delhi Assembly can make laws in the state list as well as in the concurrent list. On all these matters except public order, police and land, the LG is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Furthermore, the Supreme Court judgment held that consultation with LG is required on all matters on which the Legislative Assembly is competent to make laws. However, this consultation does not mean concurrence. Now, here lies the important point that the Supreme Court judgment stressed on consultation, whereas the Delhi High Court judgment, if we just move back a little bit, the Delhi High Court judgment stressed on concurrence. But the Supreme Court judgment held on consultation. Consultation means exchange of views. You can say roughly consultation means free exchange of views, free exchange of ideas. Concurrence means that you can say permission or certification from a particular person. So what Supreme Court judgment said? Supreme Court judgment said that consultation with LG is required on all matters on which Legislative Assembly of Delhi is having power to make laws. However, LG's concurrence is not required. So I hope you are able to see that how the situation is getting overturned or is getting turned on its head itself, where the Delhi High Court judgment said that concurrence of LG is required, whereas the Supreme Court judgment is saying that LG's concurrence, Lieutenant Governor's concurrence, is not required. Furthermore, if there is a dispute between LG and the democratically elected Legislative Assembly as well as the Council of Ministers, the LG cannot refer every matter to the President. This was again cited in the judgment given by the Supreme Court. Now, in the year 2019, another case that was being contested in the Supreme Court, and this was with respect to the control over the services, the civil services. The idea was, or the question was, that who would be having administrative control over the civil services, meaning thereby power related to their transfer, posting, promotion, so on and so forth. Now, in this case, the Supreme Court, that is the case that is Government of NCT of Delhi versus Union of India. In this case, the Supreme Court gave a split verdict. Split verdict in the sense that one judge, that is Justice A.K. Sikri, held that Delhi government would be having the powers over the services, whereas Justice Ashok Bhushan said that it would be the union who would be exercising these powers. So this was a split verdict, and the issue was not settled. It was being a split verdict. So what happened? The matter was referred to a 3 judges bench in the very same year. In the meanwhile, in the year 2021, the Parliament has enacted the Government of NCT, Government of National Capital Territory Amendment Act. This Amendment Act had been passed in the year 2021. Now, what does this Amendment Act, this Government of National Capital Territory Amendment Act 2021 said? What were its provisions? Now, this was basically done first and foremost in response to the 2018 Supreme Court decision. And what was that 2018 Supreme Court decision? If we move back a little bit further so that it becomes clear to you all, the Supreme Court had held that the Chief Minister is the executive head of the NCT, National Capital Territory, not the Lieutenant Governor. Now, to nullify the judgment of the Supreme Court in the year 2021, the Parliament enacted Government of National Capital Territory Amendment Act. Now, this Amendment Act required that the bills that are passed by the Legislative Assembly of Delhi, they should be reserved by the LG, by the Lieutenant Governor, for the consideration of the President, if that bill incidentally covers matters outside the domain of the Legislative Assembly. It means that the content of the bill, if at all it is slightly breaching the domain of the Legislative Assembly of Delhi, then in such cases the LG is bound to reserve the bills which have been duly passed by the Legislative Assembly for the consideration of the President. Furthermore, all executive actions which are taken by the government must first receive the opinion of LG, meaning thereby the LG should be first giving the opinion on those executive actions, and then only the executive actions could be taken up by the government. Again, what happened? The Delhi government challenged this Amendment Act in the Supreme Court, and the Delhi government's contention was that the amendment diminishes the powers of the Legislative Assembly by establishing LG as the default administrative authority over the National Capital Territory. The Supreme Court, by the year 2022, was hearing this case related to control over services. Now, it was Justice Ramanna, the then Chief Justice, Justice Suryakant, and Justice Hima Kohli. They were hearing the arguments related to control over services, and finally, very recently, this matter has come to its conclusion, where the three judges, that is Justice Ramanna, Justice Suryakant, and Hima Kohli, these three judges referred this matter to a higher bench, which finally gave the verdict that Delhi government would be having control over the services. Now, as of now, the status is that it is the Delhi government would be having the administrative control over the services, though the cadre controlling authority of the civil services is the central government. For example, you must all be knowing that All India services, that is for IAS and IPS, for these two All India services, the cadre controlling authority, when it comes to UT, they being operationalized, utilized in Union Territory, they are allotted this cadre, AGMUT cadre, Arunachal, Goa, Mizoram Union Territory cadre, and officers from these cadre, they are provided to the Delhi government to head the various departments, various directorates, etc. At the same time, there is these two services, Group B services. These are Group B services, DANICS, 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 and DANIPS. Delhi Andaman and Nicobar Islands Civil Service, and Delhi Andaman and Nicobar Islands Police Service. These are the Group B services. Again, recruitment for these two services also happens through the Union Public Service Examination, the civil service examination conducted by UPSC. Now these two services, that is the Group B services, they are also these officers are also provided to the Delhi government to handle the various ministries, the various departments and directorates, etc. Now the transfer and posting of these officers after this recent Supreme Court judgment will be in the hands of the Delhi government. So this is the status of the current status as of now. So this was all about the administrative setup of the UT of Delhi. Talking a bit about the judiciary of a union territory. Now this judiciary for union territory is like a common theme. There would be no UT specific analysis over here. Why? Because judiciary is an integrated whole. It is an integrated continuum, right from the lower judiciary to the apex court, that is the Supreme Court. Now when it comes to the judiciary for union territory, the constitution says that for a union territory, high court could be constituted through a parliamentary law, but at the same time the same parliamentary law could designate any court in any territory to be the high court of the union territory. Now this is mentioned in article 241 clause A. Furthermore, the constitutional provisions applicable to the high courts in a state would apply to the high courts of the union territories as well. Apart from this, the parliament can extend or exclude the jurisdiction. Now this is important, extend or exclude the jurisdiction of any high court to or from I'm sorry to or from any union territory as per clause 4 of article 241. Now what is the example given? For example, Punjab and Haryana High Court. Now Punjab and Haryana High Court is having jurisdiction over the UT Union Territory of Chandigarh. Likewise, Puducherry, previously known as Pondicherry, falls under the jurisdiction of Madras High Court. Likewise, Kerala High Court exercises jurisdiction over Lakshadweep. This Calcutta High Court is having jurisdiction over Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So these are the certain examples with respect to the judicial administration, specifically at the higher judiciary level. So this was all about the administration of union territories. In the previous video we had talked about the union territory of Puducherry, and in this video we had talked about the union territory of Delhi, the National Capital Territory of Delhi. So this much from Dharmdev Ashish at this point of time. Thank you very much. Namaskar.